I am someone who really understands my personal style, and I have for quite some years now. And strongly knowing what I like and dislike has made my brand image for my vintage shop very clear. It might sound like a broken record at this point, but we focus heavily on natural fibers, like that llama coat and this silk piece, and I work heavily with neutrals and earth tones. I do appreciate a simple classic style, very versatile, easy to style pieces, simple with no flair. Then there are a few, I would say, quirky, not so mainstream things that I, for not only in my personal style, for my vintage store. 1 being sequins and sparkles and metallics. 2, camo. I do live out in the country and I appreciate a good vintage camo piece. Alongside metallics and sparkles and sequins, I love a good graphic tee, which I have heard lately on the internet that graphic tees are out of style. I'm sorry, but that sounds chronically online. A good vintage tee, especially with a graphic about something that you like, is not going to go out of style. Pair all of these things together, and that is my strong personal style. I also love things that are just well made. Pure leather bags, leather belts, leather shoes. I love the finer, well-made things, but appreciate a good deal. All of these items you're seeing are secondhand. Yes, they are thrifted, and meanwhile, you could say they're very trendy right now. These are all classics in my mind. These are all styles that I have literally been wearing since 2013, 2014, when I was in high school. All of these pieces are exceptionally well made, tons of natural fibers, genuine suede, angora, wool, cashmere. Most of them are vintage, but if they are not vintage, they are by very cool brands. You know, Levi's. All of these pieces I have brought home and cared for, steamed, washed, photographed, and now they are up for you to take a look at and see what you like. Because I'm not only really good at thrifting and buying secondhand for myself, but it is actually my whole job. I'm what you would call very widely known as a reseller, but I do like to call myself a collections curator just because I do things very specific over here. I have very specific standards for the clothes I bring in, mostly vintage, natural fibers, very, very specific styles, very specific to what I would personally wear. I often hear girls talking about what sweaters should we be buying. A lot of them go on to say that they would shop vintage, but they do not like the silhouettes. But I'm here to share that a lot of the sweaters that are vintage from the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, they are very classic styles. And actually sweaters that you're buying new today are emulating vintage styles. Except vintage is actually made of the good stuff, as today's clothing is mostly polyester. For someone who has been a collections curator, morbidly known as a reseller for several years now, you would probably think that I would be burnout or bored of picking up the same old pieces. But in fact, it's the same old pieces, and when I say old, I mean quite literally vintage, being a minimum of 20 years old. That is what actually keeps me going. I never get sick of picking up silk and wool cashmere blazers. This felt like winning the lottery, this piece here. It is so hard to find a pure cashmere coat or blazer these days. I also never get bored of neutrals. I really think it's the way you style them that brings them to life. I've heard before, don't you get bored looking at just kind of blah colors, but I think these are so rich. Just because something is a neutral does not mean that it is not rich in its color. Not all browns are the same, and I know that might sound silly, but like, if you get it, you get it. It's different undertones, you know, purple, orange, and when something is made well, when it's cashmere, it's silk, genuine leather. These pieces, they're so beautiful. You know they're going to last when they're taken care of. And that's what makes finding the same pieces, the same styles, week in and week out for several years now. That's what makes it feel new every week. You pay attention to the details and it's well made. That's where it's at.